Florida, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Indiana, West Virginia. According to the New York Times, these are the states that are set to reopen in the next week, whereas many other states are already partially open. In the wake of coronavirus, we are all anxiously awaiting the day that we can return to a life not constrained by the confines of quarantine. Though, as some states are seeing, a premature reopening can cause case numbers to spike. We decided to look at the state that has been widely impacted by the spread of coronavirus and has had to take dramatic measures to slow the rate of infection. At a briefing conference a few days ago, Governor Cuomo, the governor of New York, spoke about the possibility of partially reopening the state.
So if you look at the state, and this state is different than most states, this state has New York City, one of the most dense urban areas on the globe, and then we have upstate New York. And if you look at our infection rate upstate New York, it's very different than the rate downstate New York. And if you look at the rate upstate New York, it's comparable to many states in the Midwest and the West. We hear the discussion every day, well, some states are reopening because they don't have that bad a problem. Some of the places in upstate have a problem that's comparable to states in the Midwest or the West. Much, much different than New York City.
Though New York has by far the most number of confirmed cases and deaths than any other state, Cuomo alluded to something very interesting. He pointed out that there is not a uniformity to the prevalence of coronavirus in New York. This was very intriguing to us, so we decided to take a look at the breakdown of coronavirus in New York and determine if we felt the disparities among counties were large enough to potentially warrant different opening dates for different areas. When you look at New York as a whole in relation to other states, it is very apparent that New York has seen far more coronavirus cases than any other state. But when you take a look at individual counties within the state, you can see that there is a vast disparity between the number of cases among different areas in the state. Since coronavirus is primarily transmitted through having close contact with carriers, we decided to explore how population density correlates to the numbers we have been seeing. As Governor Cuomo mentioned, New York City is one of the most high-density cities in the United States, and this needs to be taken into account when considering opening dates. When plotting the number of cases and deaths against the population density of counties, one can see a clear positive correlation. A similar positive trend line can be seen when looking at the rate of infection with the population density. This data shows that the impact of COVID-19 in New York is not uniform. Rural counties with low population densities have experienced fewer cases, deaths, and rates of infection than urban counties like New York City. The resulting disparities in our data analysis indicate that portions of the state can likely reopen earlier than others if the proper measures are taken in prior. This data will be interesting to consider when we learn about the policies for reopening in the coming weeks.